Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and the subject of today's video newsletter, well, it's a slightly unusual video newsletter today because it's a personal video and it's going straight to the Times columnist Matthew Syed. Matthew, I hope you're watching. So Matthew, we're going to have the Matthew Challenge. That's what today's video is about. For everybody else that's watching, Matthew Syed, a brilliant sports journalist in the UK Times, has written a piece about Jose Mourinho, and in the piece he very kindly mentions Six Sigma. Now obviously everybody who watches these videos, you already know Six Sigma is my life, it's my life's purpose, and teaching Six Sigma to people is really important. So the first thing I'm going to say to you, Matthew, is thank you for putting it in the Times and sticking it on the sports pages. Brilliant. However, when you get to the point about testing and making mistakes, I'm afraid you miss the point completely. It's quite ironic in a way that you've mentioned it in your piece, because I do have your book, Black Box Thinking. For those of you that have not read Black Box Thinking and are watching this video, please go and buy it. It is a fantastic book. I recommend this to all of my clients. There's some great stuff in here. However, one of the things I take issue with, and I almost wrote to you, was the idea that the only way to test, the only way to experiment is to fail and therefore to learn something. I do tend to agree with you that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. But there's a piece in here, page 282, and it's about James Dyson. And you mention that Dyson took 5,127 prototypes to get his answer. And at that point, I started to laugh, because if Dyson had been taught Six Sigma, he would have got the answer, well, probably in about 100 prototypes. Six Sigma is 50 times faster, at least, than pass-fail, making mistakes, learning something. And actually, the idea of these marginal gains and the secret of high performance, you are 1,000,000 miles from high performance if you just test and fail, test and fail, test and fail. So, what the challenge is about, Matthew, is I'm going to introduce you to one of the great British scientists this country has ever produced. One of the great British mathematicians, because the testing method Dyson should have been using was invented by a mathematician called Ronald Fisher, R.A. Fisher. He's without doubt, probably after Isaac Newton, the best mathematician this country has ever produced. And you are running him down by saying that Six Sigma almost caused the failure of a business. What did Fisher invent? He invented a technique known as design of experiments. What I always call this is the fastest way to find out. It's the fastest way to find out. And by the way, just to tell you what Fisher achieved with his piece of mathematics, probably most of the world today is only fed because of Ronald Fisher, because his experiments helped to create modern fertilizer. Wouldn't have got done without this man. Wouldn't have been done without this man. So I think there's 7 billion people on the planet that are only here because of this guy, British mathematician and design of experiments. And it definitely isn't fail and learn something. Fail and learn something. So let me talk a little bit about what's in there. The idea of making mistakes. Okay, building things that aren't right, aren't correct, don't work, is sort of in good testing. But if that's the only testing you use, I'm sorry, you're never going to get this. You're never going to get high performance, the secret of high performance. What you do need to do, however, is you do need to make results that aren't right. That is in great testing. So let me explain how good testing works. And I'm going to use this catapult because this is your challenge, Matthew. This is going to be part of the challenge. If what you do when you test is you only move a setting in a very small region. So for instance, I've got a pullback angle on here. If I move the pullback angle from 140 to 143 degrees, what will I see? Well, I'll see very little change. I'll get a result here and I'll get a result there, and I get very little new knowledge. What you do need to do, where I agree with this, is even though maybe the 140 region is where you'd like the machine to perform, what you should do is go well above it and well below it and test the machine in a nice wide region, maybe from 120 to 170. What we'll get is a huge big signal in the data, and when you create a big signal, what do you get? Well, what you get is process knowledge. Now, there's a little bit more to design of experiments than pushing big signals through the data, but if you do that, you will learn faster. 5,127 prototypes. I admire Dyson. He's earned every billion pound that he's made out of his business if he did that. But you know what? He didn't need to do it if he knew how to do experiments correctly. So here's the challenge, Matthew. I'll put Ronald Fisher's testing technique, in fact, I'll put Six Sigma's testing technique up against your trial and error method. Now, here's what we're going to do. How about this? We're going to test what this cup does, what the elastic position does. So we'll move this set in here. We'll move the pin at the front of this catapult, and we'll move the angle by 40 degrees, okay? And I'll let you do trial and error tests, okay? As many as you want, okay? However, within an hour and a half, let's say, within an hour and a half, here's the challenge. You're a table tennis player, aren't you, Matthew? I want you to land a table tennis size ball in there. You need to know how to do that within an hour and a half. You can have as many tests as you want, okay? But here's the challenge. When we put the cup at the target, I choose where it goes. And you have to get the ball in the cup with the first shot, okay? And then I'll take the challenge. I'll do the same thing. I'll do my experiments. And by the way, just to let you know, I'm only going to do 16. You can have as many experiments as you like. I'm doing 16. And when I've done 16, I will know how to land the ball in the cup wherever you choose to place it. That is true experimentation. That's the experimentation that Dyson should have used. Matthew, would you like to take the challenge? I look forward to your answer. By the way, if you want to get hold of me, Paul.Allen at alanp.co.uk. Drop me an email. I look forward to you taking the challenge. By the way, just to know what you're taking on, for the cup height, there's 3 adjustments. For the elastic position, there's 3 adjustments. For the pin position at the front, there's 3 adjustments. And finally, we're going to move the angle by 40 degrees. Okay, so that's what you're taking on. If you multiply 3 by 3 by 3 by 40, you get 1,080 choices. Six Sigma testing says, if I test the right 16 experiments, I will know the result of all 1,080 settings. That's what I'm going to use. You can use the trial and error technique, but when you've finished, when I put this cup somewhere on a linear line, you need to hit it with the first shot, your first setup, because that's what I'm going to be able to do. Matthew Syed, take the challenge.